The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome in to the Bill Clark Show, episode 15, as we get ready for Rivalry Week. Pat Smith along with Coach Bill Clark, Landry Roberts, Molly Robinson with you on this very special holiday edition of the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. Coach, I say this all the time. I sound like a broken record, but my goodness, this seems like to me the craziest of college football seasons. Chaos galore. Let's start in Norman, Oklahoma. How surprised were you by that outcome?
I really was. I mean, I think, obviously, and we've talked so much about open dates and what open dates do for a team that knows what they're doing. I think the huge change offensively, and I got to see Oklahoma versus Auburn in person, but the huge change to go to this true quarterback run attack. Now, the things when you have nothing to lose, and I'm sure that's how they felt. That's what you get. Sometimes that's how these upsets happen. So they really made these big changes offensively. Defensively, I knew it. We talked about it on the show. We knew they were going to give them different looks. We knew they were going to have a plan for Milroe. Once again, the extra week to find the chinks in the armor.
My question is for Kane Womack and that defense, and you mentioned implementing a true quarterback run style in your offense. You knew that Oklahoma team had been challenged, especially through the air. They've been decimated at wide receiver with injuries and some of those other things. How much of that do you think caught Alabama off guard on Saturday night, and what did you see as far as adjustments?
Yeah, I think they were caught off guard. I don't think there's any doubt, because that was the extreme of running the ball with running the quarterback, all these different schemes. I went back and watched it, just a little while ago. Every different way to run the quarterback. And he can run. I think that, you heard that on the air from Herb Street. I think that was something that people probably did not understand what a good runner he was. But, and I've said this before, as a defensive coach, you've got to be a detective. Who is calling the plays? What's the background? That's why you're trying to find something, and them having that open date allowed them to really go wholesale to this change, as far as Oklahoma goes.
You could hear fans yelling at their television sets, Alabama fans going, make adjustments, make adjustments. As a defensive coordinator, how easy is that? How practical is that? In game, seeing something like that, and then having your 11 guys on that side of the ball quickly do something else other than what you've been practicing.
Yeah, it's hard, and you've got it in the package. And we've all had that, and we're just, hey, this is a totally different team. Things that I talk about all the time. What do we do when we go from the guy who's the thrower to the runner? That's what you got to be ready for. So they should be ready now. I think we're forgetting there was two giant turnovers, really three, but two giant turnovers by their offense that took the ball down the goal line. So there's 14 points really right there, But when we're just talking about defense right now, I think you got to have a plan for that. Give Oklahoma credit, and once again, the open date helped them.
I was going to ask you, thinking back, whether it was you at Prattville, Jacksonville State, South Alabama as an assistant coach, head coach at UAB. Did you ever have a situation where a bad week of practice correlated into a loss, or you had a really good week of practice, and then you go out and perform a stinker like Alabama did in Norman? Because everyone we talked to in Tuscaloosa and around that football team, they did not see that coming.
Yeah, I don't think they really were ready for what Oklahoma was going to do, and I think home field advantage, backs against the wall, the big changes they made, and a coach who's a defensive specialist. I mean, you're talking about one of the best defensive coaches in the last 10 years, theoretically. And I have studied Brent Venables through the years, and the back and forth, I think, them watching us, probably me watching them a lot more than them watching us, but I think how he does it with his guys and motivating his guys and playing really good defense, and then to come up with a good offensive plan that fit that. I think it was just a recipe for the upset.
And not saying that this is the sole reason why Alabama played that way. You mentioned it, missed opportunities, both sides of the ball, game flow, and all of those things. But now with NIL, with guys that are rolling into stadiums every Saturday, and their portfolio, it doesn't look like the normal 18 to 23-year-old kid, whether they're worth a couple $100,000 in some cases, millions of dollars. How much do you think that might change the psyche of a guy in being fully invested week in, week out?
Yeah, there is 1,000,000% that is happening. They've got agents calling them. They're worried about injuries. They're looking at the next game. And we've dealt with that, seen that before, where they're just worried about going to the NFL. But now they've got so many people in their ear telling them things about money and all these things that an 18 to 22-year-old young man, it's going to be hard. I mean, it'd be hard for any of us stuff they're dealing with, and then you just got the length of a season. I mean, you're just physically exhausted. What has changed, and I know I keep harping on this, but when you get a late in the year open date, what happened to Alabama's and LSU's, we remember they matched up. So it was 2 open date teams, and that's what makes for should be a really good game. Then all of a sudden you get it where it changes. It's different than your singular open date. Now you're just physically beat up, and then here comes a team that's fresh. Just that alone makes a big deal.
Let's talk about the psychological makeup, Coach, because now they're going into the biggest rivalry game, biggest game so many people in the state of Alabama, no matter what the records are, playing for a CFP or SEC championship. I mean, this is for bragging rights. How do you get back up after you have been working so hard to get to Atlanta? That goes out the window, and now you're clinging for your CFP life. And, oh, by the way, you're playing a team that is definitely trending in the right direction.
Yeah, best thing, worst thing. The best thing for them is Auburn won. And so they now have gotten their attention against a good Texas A&M team and said, we don't have to tell you, even though it's a rivalry game, even though you're going to get their best, look what they just did. They've been close. Kids here close, they lost. This was a win. You can see it right. Oh, by the way, we lost. So there you go. They've got something right now, and it is a rivalry game. Of course, Alabama's got some advantages being at home. We know that. Auburn, and we're going to talk about them, played well. This is going to be a big deal right here, and I think the win was huge for them. But it does at least wake Alabama up, I would think.
With some of the comments by DeMarcus Riddick, the freshman there in front of me, it had to make you cringe. I'm sure coaches everywhere were cringing when they heard those.
Yeah, and that's why you're so careful about who speaks. If you don't think those things motivate guys extra, it does. We're all, got my guys used to say, Coach, you're always trying to find something. I said, yeah, I'm looking for something without something being there, much less somebody give me something that motivates my team. That is everywhere. That's posted in everybody's locker, and they don't need any help. They don't need any help, and you just give them some.
Well, let's talk about the Auburn win against Texas A&M because, once again, they got the running game going.
Yeah.
Peyton Thorne has played really good at that quarterback position. You look at his numbers now. I mean, he's better efficiently-wise throwing the football than he is Jalen Milroe. So just talk about what you saw in that game against Texas A&M and how they'll use that to springboard against Alabama.
Well, you got this great receiver in Coleman, and our guy on our other side is really good as well, who made some big plays, but vertical shots off that running game. And that's what happens when you can run the ball. Now that opens up these vertical throws, especially when you got big play receivers. I mean, that's what they hadn't been doing. They have not been taking advantage of it. You got to run the ball enough to run the ball. You've got probably the best player in the league. Oh, by the way, you got 2 great receivers. Then we take vertical throws. I mean, so these are just things we've been talking about all year. Less on the RPO side of it, with still some RPOs in there, but just true run and play action shots off that is something they got because they got the best running back in the league. Then they've got all their other things that they do that are still there. So I think top to bottom, the quarterback's playing well. He had the bad turnover, coming, from there on in, was bad. But other than that, I think, what did he throw for 301 yards? We talked about the vertical balls. And then flip to the defense. I thought their defense was solid, and there was a lot of points, more points than you'd want to give up. But they had a big stop right there at the end of the game that got it to overtime. And of course the guy drops the ball at the end of the game. But still, I thought defensively they've played well all year and they were solid.
With some of those almost losses that they've had this season, a lot of close games, and finding different ways to lose games, how crucial was that for them from a psyche standpoint to finally get over the hump?
Yeah, you can't put it – I mean, really, you can't judge it. It's just that big. I mean, it was almost life or death for them that they needed a win no matter what happened Saturday. I think that win gave them a chance for this win because now they've got belief. But they did the things that let you win games. They didn't beat themselves other than the one turnover. They've not been turning it over, really. I think just some of the RPO things and some of the special teams deals, and I think just finding a way to win. And that's what you got to do. You got to find a way to win in those close games.
And you mentioned the psyche of an Alabama team and coming off a loss and getting those players' attention. Meanwhile, for an Auburn team, you finally get over the hump. You get over a win over a ranked team at home. Does that energize you even more, give you more? Obviously, it's going to give you more confidence, but does that energize your team even more, even though it seems like us as fans watching that game, they would be emotionally spent, You got crowd rushing the field for
Right.
overtimes. How does that typically work?
I think it really was everything for them because it says, hey, everything the coaches have been telling us is right. You know, everything we've been saying, if we just play a little bit harder, be a little smarter with the ball, make the right throw, it works against, you know, arguably one of the best teams in the league who had everything to play for. We find a way to win. Of course, Auburn's a special place to play at home. You know, and I think these factors of being at home, and Alabama's going to get that factor this week, which is a big deal, you know. But I think that it gives them a lot of belief as they go into this week that they needed.
All right, so we were talking about momentum about this Auburn football team going into the Alabama game. Let's talk about UAB because now they have momentum. Getting a big win, their final home game of the season. Now they're on the road playing a Charlotte team that's already relieved their head coach of a job. Just talk about what UAB could do to help go into the offseason on a big positive note.
I mean, these are games they should win. I'm just being honest. I mean, I think the talent is there. You've got a team without a head coach. I mean, that's games you should win. I think even though Charlotte won last week, FAU is without their
head
so
coach.
It was two teams without a head coach. I mean, you should win these games. I think Rice was solid. Big interception before half, and then they blew it open in the second half and ran the ball. So these are some formulas that they just got to not turn it over. But, you know, they should feel good going into this game, you know, even though they haven't won a game on the road. So this is huge in every way for them to get a win and a road win.
You know, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and we've heard Coach Dilfer actually talk about that, address that in his weekly press conferences, and unfortunately that's a reality for some football players these days, especially with the nature of the transfer portal and NIL, looking to that next thing. How big of a concern do you think that is and how that plays out on Saturday?
It's going to be a concern for everybody in college football. I mean, everybody's dealing with it. I was talking to a coach yesterday, and he's had about 5 guys offered in the last week from bigger schools that he developed. Nobody really knew about him. I mean, you know, he's sick. And I think there's so many guys going through this. But the one thing I can say, you're at the last game. I mean, you know, so we got a 1-game season here. You know, you get a break when this is over. Let's put everything into this. We're coming off a win. Let's go get this road win that we hadn't had.
Smart Bank's smart call of the week is Jacksonville State. Let's talk about the Gamecocks for a minute because 3 games into the season, they're 0-3. But all of a sudden now, that's a program that, you know, you're noted to kind of darken the doorways of the football office and maybe go to practice, kind of chill out a little bit, just kind of watch. What have you seen? What is the transformation about this football game? Because Trey Stewart is an outstanding running back.
Yeah, you know, so I got to see him in the preseason. I knew the quarterback. And I like Logan Smothers, who's their backup. I know his dad. But you saw Huff, and you knew that was the guy. And it was just, you know, I'm talking to Coach Rod, and it was like, we just got to get the guy to learn the playbook. But you knew that guy was something special. He can run it. He can throw it. With what they do offensively, with all the quarterback reads, every way you can run a quarterback with high tempo. You know, I was there for the Southern Miss game. You know, I was there that week to see the changes. And there wasn't panic, but there was sure urgency. And I think that game, they really dominated Southern Miss in that game, and that really got them rolling. You know, they had lost a heartbreaker the week before they were down there really to win the game, but that game propelled them, got them going, you know, and I think what they do offensively is so hard to prepare for. They play so fast. I think, you know, statistically they play faster than anybody in the country, but their defense has come on. Their defense has come on, and I think that along with what they do offensively is why, you know, you're talking about one of the best stories in college football.
Would that be your preference as a defensive coach, to have an offense that goes fast as all get out?
You know, I think I was always of the opinion we need to be able to go fast on offense, and we didn't do a ton of that. But I love, you know, you either go fast or you're a shift motion. You know, move the tight end, change that snapshot up. But I don't mind tempo as long as we can slow it down when we need to. Now, tempo run's a little bit different than tempo pass, you know, because there's a physicality to it, and you are wearing on those guys. Tempo pass, just think about it. You know, boom, 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 3 incompletions. You've done nothing to them physically to wear them down, and the defense is right back on the field. So tempo run is a little bit different than tempo pass. And also, they can take the air out of it when they need to, or they can check. So when I run up to the line and I actually run a lot of plays like that, now I got to go get the defense lined up. Then you got a chance to make checks. So because they do play so fast, it allows you to slow down when you want to.
Yeah, I mean, every time I have seen Jacksonville State this year, I mean, Stewart running the football, I think he's like 6th or 7th in the country in rushing yards. I mean, this kid is putting up some incredible numbers.
Yeah, I think he's about 193, 95 pounds, but he runs like he's about 220. And, great balance. Also got really good hands catching the ball. Of course, they're playing other backs. The O-line, obviously, with Coach Trickett does a really good job. They're just really a lot of fun to watch. And then now their defense is playing, Coach Rodriguez, if you hadn't watched him, is very intense. So
I've
there's
noticed that a couple times.
But I love somebody that's demanding. And then you see him in the cafeteria or wherever. It's like I always want to be. It's hey, we're intense here, and then I'm gonna love you up when we're off. And I see that with those guys, high expectations, and you're getting a good reward for it.
That's what you do with us here on the show.
That's right. Let's just win the game. And
Sometimes he's really nice to us.
well,
sometimes.
we are glad Pat made it this week too.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, he checked on me last week.
I did
He
check on
He
him.
checked on me.
Coach
He's-
keeps receipts.
Wanted to make sure I was okay. It is. Smart Bank. Let's talk about hometown banking and Smart Banking and what those fine folks do.
Yeah, once again, we love our guys at Smart Bank, and just getting to be with them and being on the board with those guys. It's good people. I think you're gonna go in there and you're gonna know your banker's name, but it's the small town bank feel of people knowing who you are, but it got all the big banking amenities of everything we need.
Webb Concrete and Building Materials, building blocks to victory. Not a very difficult thing to think about in regards to what this segment's going to be. It's Auburn, the keys to their success, or what they're going to hone in on, Coach, in regards to trying to get a win against Alabama.
Well, kind of as we alluded to with Oklahoma against Tennessee, they've now created a good defensive blueprint for what to do against Alabama. So I promise you that's been looked at. Now, we know both of these teams have been working on each other all year. But I think we could really just repeat what we said. Can they do what they did last week offensively? Really run the ball, take their vertical shots, protect the football offensively, and then defensively, we're going to talk about Oklahoma at the end of the show. But I think that blueprint they used against the run game of Milroe, stopping his run game, making him go east and west and not north and south, and of course limit the vertical throws. That's easier said than done with Williams, and I think Alabama's run game is struggling, as we know. So if you can contain Milroe, you got a chance.
With the success that Oklahoma had with Jackson Arnold running the football at the quarterback position, we know that Peyton Thorne is certainly capable. Heck, he came up with a pivotal play there on that drive late in that game to get down the field and to tie it, to send it to overtime. How much of that do you think is peppered in? Because it seems right now, Jarquez Hunter, that might be the only guy that you really need there.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because that is something you would look, and they'll find a run or two that they liked. They'll have some runs for Thorne, but that's really not their game. Their game is he's athletic, but they're running Hunter, their RPO, their vertical throws. I think they're just a little bit different because it's just a little bit different scheme. But they'll find 2 or 3 of those schemed up runs that they really like that you'll probably see.
All right, from an Alabama perspective, what worries the coaches? What keeps them up at night when you look at DJ Durkin's defense for Auburn? Like, what kind of problems can they present to make Alabama out of their norm when it comes to offense?
I think they've been consistent all year. I think they really, overall, if we just looked at the body of work from the first game to the last, they've been consistent. They've played hard. They're physical. I think they've done a good job on third down. That's always, what do we do? What do we do on third down? What do we do in the red zone? Third downs, they give you a lot of different looks. Really, I really thought Texas A&M was about to take that game, and I think they found a way to get a stop there. Texas A&M at the end of the game, they had all the momentum, and that goes back to the defense. So I think you got a guy who's been there and been in the wars. They've had a good, body of work for the year, as we said a minute ago, and now you've got Oklahoma that's giving them blueprint for what works against Milroe.
How advantageous is it for that defense? Because we think about Jalen Milroe and using his legs, and he can be most effective when he does so. But Auburn against Arkansas, you had Taylor Green, a dual threat type of guy. They had to face some of that. I'm trying to remember. Of course, last week versus Texas A&M, you had a guy that could do it through the air or with his legs. How much does that help Auburn in preparing for one Jalen Milroe?
Yeah, I think that's what you need. You want to have seen somebody similar, and in a lot of ways you would say, well, there's nobody exactly like Milroe. Well, he's struggling right now in some different spots. He's probably not throwing good. Got to give Oklahoma credit though for a lot of the different looks they did against him. And I think once again, when you've got extra time, which they had, that was a big advantage for them. because they rolled, and we're going to talk about defensive, but things they did trapping certain looks and taking some of those quick throws away. I think Auburn's they've got a blueprint to look at. Can they morph? And defensively, to me, it's a lot easier to do that when you're a multiple defense.
All right, Webb Concrete and Building Materials, they bring that segment to us each and every week on the show.
Oh, yeah, we got all these locations for Webb Concrete, Phil Webb, and what a great job he does. Obviously, my son is working at the Pell City store handling the flooring, but we got Pell City Flooring, Concrete, and Lumber. You got an Oxford showroom, Ready Mix, Birmingham, Homewood, Heflin Center. They got locations all over the place. And remember, you've got all the different things you need to build a house.
Alabama Power brings us each and every week. Coach gives us his list, his power numbers. What do you got this week, Coach?
Wow, what a crazy week. And I know you guys probably talked about this all week.
Can't wait for this, Landrum.
But yeah, so see if
He's
I can
setting it up right now.
Yeah, see if I can match it up with you guys.
Let's see how he swings BYU in the top 10 this week. This might be a problem.
12B.
12B.
All right, so here we go. Oregon 1, no surprise. Ohio State 2. Obviously, very impressed with their win against Indiana. Texas still holding in there at 3. Penn State found a way. They got the fake punt at the end of the game.
Such a Yankee coach.
Yeah, Notre Dame. I mean, it's sad. That's what we're talking about, all these northern schools. Notre Dame at 5. Obviously very impressive against Army. Georgia at 6. I've got Tennessee at 7. Miami at 8. Which has found a way all year to win games. Indiana at 9, SMU at 10, Boise at 11, and there's Clemson sitting at 12. Of course, you got Alabama at 13, South Carolina at 14. So just a crazy week.
No BYU.
I did say 12B, didn't I?
That's your other poll.
Yes.
Alabama Power, they do so much, Coach, for the community and what they do around college football as well.
Yeah, and I think just a lot of our folk listeners, just how involved they are with conservation and the waterways and really all the things that are involved in just keeping our state clean. But they're so philanthropic and involved in almost any kind of charitable event around our community. You're going to find Alabama Power involved.
Donahue Chevrolet's Drive for Success, Coach, and let's go down to the Swamp in Gainesville, Florida. Molly was in attendance at that game. She was doing the Gator Chomp against my brethren there from the great state of Mississippi, which really upset my family during Thanksgiving meal. But anyway, with that being said, great game plan by Florida, the way that they attacked. Just kind of talk a little bit about the keys to success in that game.
Yeah, I'm gonna start on the defensive side. I think they, bringing in Ron Roberts was a big deal. I think just getting that veteran over there on the defensive side of the ball, their defense has really improved throughout the year, and they got good people. I don't think there was any doubt about that, but I've seen just some things they're doing defensively really changed. Thing that, and I know Coach Napier talked about, but very noticeable in both those games, turnover margin. They've won the turnover margin, and then they found ways to score touchdowns in the red zone and hold the opponent to field goals. I mean, that's just one of those things we talk about all the time. Obviously, Lagway really doing a good job. I mean, he has just been so impressive as a freshman, and he seems to be getting better every week. So, the fourth downs with our boy, and granted, I guess I look back and I was really upset watching these not executing their fourth downs, but they had success prior to that. But Florida did a great job. They stopped them 3 times on fourth down. So those were a huge deal. But they've been playing well. They've got belief, and I think that's the thing when you start looking at somebody. We were talking about that with Auburn. They're starting to believe, and that goes with playing well. Just as much as the physical part. I think they're believing, and you're seeing it. Money
and quarterbacking goes on in the league all over the world, but basically when you look at this Ole Miss game plan, it's very perplexing. The number one question that we got on the radio show and the people that I talked to in Mississippi was, where was Bentley, their top running back? Yep. Only 11% of all carries in that football game was done by running back.
Yeah.
You had a defensive lineman, you had a tight end, you had wide receivers, and you had the quarterback that took the bulk of the handoffs or taking the ball upfield as opposed to your running back. When you're watching that as a former coach, I know he knows his personnel better than anybody watching the game, but did that not raise some question marks in your mind? Like why are we trying to do this?
Once again, I went back and looked at the stats, and they had success with that package. I think for somebody that has so much success with the RPO world and the throw game, when you get into those short yardage, and you've got to be able to run the ball, and that don't mean you don't throw a play action, hit the back out off a play fake or things like that, but I think that's that's probably his weak spot, as good a play caller as he is. And then they're forced to kind of get out of their comfort zone on those 4th and shorts, which if you're going to go for a lot of them, you better be good at it.
Yeah, no kidding. And talking about being very good at it, and that's Donahue Chevrolet.
Yeah, we talk about these guys, and it goes without saying to us because we deal with them, but you want to go to somebody when you're going to try and purchase a vehicle, somebody you feel like is going to tell you the truth, and have a great inventory. So, obviously you can go to Donahue.Chevrolet.com. They got a lot of year-end deals going on. Of course, teachers and first responders and military, they're always got excellent deals for those guys. But check them out, Donahue.Chevrolet.com and no dealer doc fees.
Radiance Technology Defense of the Week, and you don't have to think very hard to think about what Oklahoma did to Alabama. Let's go back to Norman, and I know you have been able to, you're close with Brent Venables, so you've watched his defense over the years. Just tell us what you saw and what they did to make Alabama so one-dimensional.
Well, I've been impressed with him through the years and multiplicity with guys that play really hard, and I think that's what you want to see. And I think having the extra week, as we talked about, really led to this great effort. But, I had seen them to play a lot more 3 down, and I was really looking for that as I went back and studied the film, but they played a lot of 4 down. Both their edge defenders really did a good job. Now, when we look at that first interception where they threw just a bubble or a quick throw out to the trips formation, they trapped that corner. So there was obviously something they had seen. That's one of those deals where when they get in this, we're going to check to a corner trap. And I was very shocked that Milroe just threw it right into it. So, that was obviously, again, something they had not really shown them or give them. So that was basically, I'm sure, a check based on a tendency. And that's what we always say, always and never. When you always give me this look or you never do something out of a look, that's what I'm looking for. Can't answer that exactly, but they trapped the corner there. Second interception, the outside linebacker just did a great job. He cut underneath an out throw, the pick for 6.
Right.
So the first one, was ran it down the goal line. This was a pick for 6 where he ran up under that throw. It wasn't a great read, but obviously that was good coaching on their part. Third interception was off the hit. The guy just happened to be standing there, but it was pressure. And I think multiplicity played really good up front, did a really good job. And this is what I've watched them all year. They tackle well. And that's as we always said, get off blocks, run the football, and then tackle well. And that's something you got to work on.
All right, so let me ask you this. Was Oklahoma, did they have a spy on Milroe? Were they doing anything specific to try to stop Milroe from getting to the outside or doing something that they could contain him between the tackles?
Yeah, this was one of the things we did. It's kind of one of the things I always talked about went up from high school. We were seeing the spread, and we started going to Okie. We got to go into a 3-man look. We had a guy on the quarterback and a guy on the back and could play 2-man around it. I saw them play 2 spies on Milroe. 2.
Oh, wow.
Which put them in man free. So they were doing 2 spies on him, which put another guy on the running back, and that puts you in a man free situation. So not just 1, but 2 from a 3 down look, which tells you, So then all of a sudden, he's holding the ball, and that's the chances they've got to make those completions. But I saw 1 spy, but I saw a lot of 2 spy, and then great edge pressure.
One of the frustrations from Alabama fans this week on the radio show has been the fact that you've seen that in the 3 Alabama losses, Jalen Milroe has 28 yards total rushing in 3 losses.
Yep.
He's not running north and south. He's trying to get lateral. I'm not sure if because of what happened during the Georgia game, he believes that he's faster than any human being on the face of the planet, but he's having a problem running vertically instead of running up and down. Like, what can be done this week? Because Auburn's going to be ready and throw the same stuff that Oklahoma did.
Yeah, I think that's what do you do to get him running north and south? And I think defense on the other turn said, hey, if we can make him go east and west, that's his weakness. So the defense has built itself around forcing him out of the pocket and forcing him to run east and west. There's still that question on when he's a little bit, is he banged up? Is he yumped up? I can't answer that. I think when we've seen him really fresh, he's looked really good. Oklahoma had the guys on their side of the ball that could run him down. I mean, it was.
So they had dudes.
They had dudes.
Okay.
So let's not make any doubts about they got guys on defense that could play anywhere in the country and are good. we're going to see this week. Does Auburn have those same?
Does that translate?
Does that translate? Because they've got something to look at.
Yeah. Not asking for a prediction, but just how you think this game is going to go at Bryant-Denny. Do you think this is going to be a nail biter? You think this is going to be a lot of points, defensive struggle? From that point of view.
Yeah, just where I'm looking at it from right now, I think it's going to be a close game. I do think Alabama being at home is a factor. I think Auburn's confidence. Alabama, though, has probably been woke up by this. It should be a really good game. I think Auburn is trending up. I would have said we would have all said Alabama was trending up to this last game. So we're going to see how they handle the adversity. Auburn's had to deal with it all year. It should make for a really good game, and that's not coach speak or Ray. I really think it's going to be a really good game.
So in regards to a Vegas point spread, currently it's 11.5 Alabama. Do you think it's inside the number or outside that number?
Yeah, I think it's less. I think it's going to be a closer
Inside the
game.
number.
I do. I think it's going to be inside. I think it's going to be a closer game than that. I really do.
Alabama's averaging 43 points at home this year.
It's amazing what that energy of your home crowd does. It just really does. I mean, when you got a great crowd, and we start talking about 90, 100,000 people pulling for you, and every time you're trying to make a check on the other side of the ball, I mean, it doesn't take many of those to change a game. When you can't hear your signals, you can't hear the count, your fans pick you up. So that is an advantage, and we've seen that in all the games that's been played at Tuscaloosa between them, so far.
Jimmy Lee, Buffalo Rock, and Dr. Pepper coach bring us this program each and every week.
Yeah, I think I need to give a shout out to Jimmy because I think he's made like 60 straight Iron Bowls. I mean, there's got to be some record. So he's not missing this one, and he's gone when he was sick and not feeling good. So we love Jimmy Lee. He's got boxes at Alabama and Auburn. Buffalo Rock does. So they support both teams, but he's gonna make it. We appreciate them and obviously appreciate Dr. Pepper.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning us in. This is the Bill Clark Show right here on Jocks 94.5.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper.